Up until pretty recently, the Zelda series has been synonymous with this idea of hand-holding, about getting from point A to point B and doing a thing and then rinse and repeat. Now I'm mostly talking about the 3D games here. A handful of the 2D games are actually pretty open-ended in the sense that you can do some of the dungeons in any order you want to. Notably, the original Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, and A Link Between Worlds. Now I'm not gonna say what's already been said here. We all know that Breath of the Wild is about breaking conventions, but what I will say is that it acts as a stepping stone for the future of the Zelda franchise, and here's why. I think that when the game came out initially, there was this idea shared by most reviewers that it hit all the right notes, that it did everything perfectly because it innovated and was such a breath of fresh air. No pun intended. In my opinion, what this game sets out to do, it does really well. I want to talk about the goals of the game's development for a minute. In 2014, during our first look at the game, Eiji Aonuma stated, "As far as what you can do with such a vast world to explore, as soon as those boundaries are removed, it means you can enter any area from any direction. So the puzzle solving in this game begins the moment the player starts to think about where they want to go, how they will get there, and what they will do when they arrive." This is a clean break from the conventions of past games in the Zelda series, where you had to follow a set path and play through the scenario in the right order. He touched on this idea multiple times during development, so let's look at how these ideas translate in-game and then tackle them one by one. We have the idea that the boundaries are removed, and that puzzle solving, the essence of the Zelda series, is woven into the experience of exploring the world rather than being just relegated to dungeons. So you're probably wondering where the title comes in, subconscious design. Well, it's something I kind of put together in my head as I thought more about this game. It's made up of two parts, the creator and the consumer, and these come together to create the creator-consumer effect. On the creator side, we have something that the creator designed specifically in a way that the consumer will process mainly in the subconscious during their experience. And on the consumer side, something that is designed in one way by the creator that can be interpreted in a totally different way by the consumer by pulling from subconscious human nature. These can be some of the strongest building blocks for a work of art, and that doesn't just go for games. It can apply to movies, books, anything. The thing that makes it so great is that it's a framework that can be shaped and molded to your liking. Now, I know that's a mouthful, so let's break it down. Again, we'll start with the creator side here because it's easier to understand. This is where Zelda comes in, and what better way than to start with the title? There's something about it that separates it from almost every other title in the series. If you look at most titles before it, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, etc., they all have something in common. Each title features that respective game's main plot device. But Breath of the Wild doesn't do this. The developers had the perfect plot device in mind to make use of for the title, so that begs the question, why isn't this game titled The Legend of Zelda Sheikah Slate? Think about it. It's featured prominently in the story with multiple appearances and cutscenes, it contains all of Link's runes, acts as a compendium, and enables pin placing and fast travel through his map. But as the centerpiece of the whole experience, why isn't it in the title? Something else the series has really focused on in the past is storytelling. But if we go back to Aonuma's idea, we see that the player isn't bound by the story this time around. Rather, they have the tools to experience a story of their own. There is no explicit Breath of the Wild, quote unquote. It's something you feel and experience throughout your journey, and having that in the title instead of the Sheikah Slate is to nudge the player in a different direction. It's to help them understand that the game is shaking things up a bit before they go in expecting the next grand narrative-driven experience. It's a very intimate feeling to be left to forge your own path. It was probably the biggest risk on Nintendo's part, considering it's not an idea everyone can get behind, and they can't please everyone. But for most people it was, and I think that's because of the tools that were given, like the Slate for instance. It opens up new possibilities that weren't present in past games due to their more linear nature. For example, in older titles, most puzzles were located in dungeons and required a certain item with context clues to open the path to the next area. But in Breath of the Wild, as stated by Aonuma, the world presents puzzles because of how it's designed, so something as simple as getting from one place to the next could be a puzzle in itself. Do you use horseback, get to a high place and use the paraglider, or do you maybe stop a tree with stasis and launch yourself to your next destination? They give you all the tools you need from the beginning, and then they give you a taste of their situational uses in the 4 plateau shrines before letting you roam free. I can't explain how cool it felt to figure out that I could climb a waterfall with Cryonis before I got the Zora armor. These are the kind of moments that make you feel truly immersed in the game, and when you're given a wide variety of tools, it makes it engaging and fun to test them out and see what sticks for you. You really feel like you're playing a role in the world. I can pretty safely say that this is the Breath of the Wild that I feel when I mess around for hours in Hyrule. And it explains our first point. The world and the tools were designed in such a way that makes you feel a deeper connection to the game, and I think it's reflected beautifully in the title. So now that we have the creator side tackled, let's move on to the consumer side. This is where, Zelda comes in? Oh, right, that one. Now, people love to theorize about their favorite things, and I thought the best way to explain the consumer side would be to present a theory of my own about how Zelda's character was used in the game, because this is where it gets a little confusing. Keep in mind we're going to be making some comparisons here. So yes, like I said, the story kinda takes a backseat this time around. However, I think that Zelda's arc was definitely fleshed out a lot in this game, and for good reason. Her character flaws make her feel so real. She struggles with what she wants her future to be, and what the kingdom, and most importantly her father, needs of her. But why put such thought and care into a character when the story isn't as important to the experience? Here's my theory. The memories, while created for the purpose of having a cohesive story given the type of gameplay, serve as a connection to Zelda, and the reason she feels so much more fleshed out than all the other characters is that she acts as Link's closest companion in the past. She makes the player feel like their actions have weight, and gives them the motivation to complete the story. This is an example of the consumer side. Yes, it's something that I feel when I play the game, but then it comes back around as my own interpretation of the developer's intent. It all fits together to become the creator-consumer effect. However, there's one more key ingredient to the effect that you need in order to successfully pull it off, and that's passion. If it weren't for passion, the creator wouldn't put the time and effort into crafting an experience that can be enjoyed in the type of way that Breath of the Wild can. And the same goes for the consumer. It's because of my passion for this game that I get excited to discuss my interpretations of it online with people all over the world. It's a yin-yang effect, and passion is in the center of it all. If it weren't for our passion as creators and consumers, it would fall apart, and the overall quality of what would otherwise be great works could suffer as a result of a disconnect between the intentions of the two parties. That's not to say great art can't exist without it. Works can be taken at face value, sure, but it's always fascinating to explore the effect hidden within our favorite things where it can be found, and it can otherwise be incredibly hard to bridge the gap between the creators and the consumers when either side isn't as passionate as the other. This is why I say it's a great foundation, because the chain is only as strong as the weakest link. No? Alright. I won't go into detail here because it's been talked about at length by this point, and I just wanted to explain what I found really cool about the game. However, as far as what the game doesn't do well, frankly, almost everything that I haven't talked about could use some improvement. The shrines, the battle system, the rest of the story, the side quests, and most importantly, the overall difficulty curve. Side note, I mapped out the overall curve of the path I took through the game and about how difficult they felt at major points of interest, and in comparison to the average difficulty curve, it's hideous. But I understand that this is Nintendo's first big romp into the open world genre, and there's a ton of room for improvement. I only hope that Nintendo doesn't focus too much on these perfect scores and become blind to criticism. And as for what I'd like to see in the future, I would want them to take the ideas that I brought to the table here, improve upon them even further, and iron out all the kinks. I think if this game could recapture what the first game did for the series, who's to say they can't replicate the near perfection of A Link to the Past? It may take a bit of trial and error, but I'm confident in their ability to make it happen. And after all,
I think that one convention we can leave, right?